The music stopped. The hall grew quiet. Mark raised his glass and smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Friends," he said into the microphone, "tonight I must be honest. My wife has let herself go. She is too heavy now. Too slow. She is no longer the woman I married." People gasped. Emily stood in her blue dress, hands shaking. Mark waved to the slim, brown-skinned housemaid standing near the buffet. "Look at Lena," he said. "She is neat. She is light on her feet. She knows how to move." He reached for Lena's hand and pulled her to the center. The band began to play again. Mark danced with the maid while the crowd watched, whispering. Then he kissed Lena's hand, lifted the microphone once more, and spoke the words that struck like a slap. "From tonight," he said, "I will spend my evenings with someone who knows how to care for me properly." The room spun for Emily. She heard a plate shatter. She tasted salt on her lips. 100 eyes turned to her, pity from some, joy from a few, cruel interest from others. Emily took one step back, then another. And just before she could run, Mark said, "Don't leave, Emily. You will hear the rest." "The rest?" "Now let us go back to how that night was born." Emily once moved like morning light, soft, bright, and quick. She laughed with her whole face. She hugged people with both arms. She baked sweetbread for neighbors and wrote kind notes on yellow sticky paper. When she married Mark, she believed she had found a man who would protect her heart. Mark was tall and handsome. He told good jokes. He smelled like clean soap and cool rain. He sold cars and wore sharp suits. When they were poor, they ate noodles and smiled, saying, "We will rise." When they became comfortable, they promised to stay simple. They made plans to adopt a child one day. They said they would travel to see mountains, lakes, and quiet farms. Life as life does brought change. Mark's business grew. He made money. He bought a bigger house. He bought a shiny black car with leather seats. He also bought distance. Long hours. Late meetings. New friends who spoke fast and laughed at mean things. Emily, who once worked at a small daycare, stopped to support Mark's events. She cooked for staff. She kept the books. She sat alone many nights, waiting for the sound of Mark's key. Food became comfort. Sweets became a blanket for worry. Her body grew rounder. Her face grew softer. She told herself, "It's okay. Bodies change. Hearts stay." One rainy Tuesday, when the gutters overflowed and the street smelled like damp leaves, Emily felt very tired. The doctor said, "You need rest. You need routine. Walk every day. Drink water. Sleep well." She tried. She truly did. But the house needed care. The business needed errands. Mark needed fancy dinners for clients. So Emily hired help, a maid for the kitchen and laundry. She chose a young woman from a cousin's church, Lena, because the cousin said, "She is polite, smart, and strong." Lena arrived with a small suitcase, 2 dresses, and a nervous smile. She said yes ma'am and no sir. She had slim arms and quick hands. She braided her hair in a neat bun at the back of her head. She moved like a quiet cat. At first, Emily was grateful. The floors shone. The shirts were pressed. The meals came out hot and on time. "Thank you, Lena," Emily would say. "This is very good." Lena would nod and look down. But something else began to happen, like a shadow growing at sunset. Mark's eyes followed Lena when she walked. Mark's voice went smooth when he spoke to her. "Lena, bring my tea," he'd say, even when Emily was standing right there with the teapot. After dinner, Mark would ask Lena about the menu as if Emily had not planned it. He would compliment the spice and the serving and the shape of the fruit on the plate, but he no longer saw the hands that washed the fruit or swept the floor. He no longer saw Emily. At first, Emily told herself not to worry. "It is just respect," she thought. "It is only newness." She changed her dress style. She wore brighter colors. She cut her hair shorter, then grew it longer, then tied it with a scarf. She tried to walk in the mornings, but her knees ached and her heart pounded and she felt people's eyes on her. She would get to the corner, feel the sting of a whisper or a honk, and turn back. The mirror became an enemy. The scale became a judge. Yet on the inside, Emily was still Emily, kind, careful, loyal. Mark began to say small, sharp things. They dropped like pins but pricked like knives. "Are you sure you want seconds?" he'd ask at dinner, loud enough for Lena to hear. "That dress looked better last year," he'd say in the hallway. "Try to keep up," he'd joke as they stepped out of the car. He started to compare Emily to women on his phone. Slim women who smiled like mannequins. "See how they work out," he'd say. "Discipline. That's all." Emily would smile and nod and feel a stone grow inside her chest. One Saturday, Mark hosted a barbecue for clients. The yard was full. The grill smoked. Children ran with sticky hands. Emily moved from table to table with lemonade, saying hello and asking if everyone had what they needed. She wore a floral dress that made her feel safe. Mark stood by the grill with two men and laughed. When Emily brought him a plate, he turned and spoke too loudly. "Careful," he said. "Don't eat it all on the way." The men laughed. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. She told herself she must have heard wrong. She placed the plate down. Then Mark added, "I'm serious, Em. I need the food for the guests, okay?" The men laughed again. Something in Emily cracked. She walked inside and counted to 10. She washed her hands for too long. She told herself not to cry, but the tears came like summer rain, fast and warm. That night, when Emily asked Mark if they could talk, he shrugged. "About what?" he said. She told him about her hurt. She told him words can bruise. She told him she was trying to feel better in her body and needed support. Mark sighed and looked at his phone. "I work hard," he said. "I want a wife who looks like it." Emily stared at him. "I am your wife," she whispered. "This is what I look like now. I still love you." Mark rolled his eyes. "Love yourself into a gym membership," he said. "I can't carry this anymore." He stood up and left the room. The door clicked. In the quiet, the fridge hummed and the world felt cold. Days passed in a soft fog. Emily moved like someone carrying a heavy pot of water and trying not to spill. She kept the house. She paid the bills. She smiled at Lena because kindness is not a costume you wear only on good days. But she saw how Lena's eyes had changed. The girl who once looked at the floor now held her chin high. She wore brighter lipstick. She stayed longer in the living room when Mark was home. If Emily asked for the kitchen to be cleaned a certain way, Lena would do it slowly, watching the clock, maybe so Mark would notice her working late. And he did. Then came the anniversary gala. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of meals and bills and holidays and jokes and promises. Emily planned the night herself. She ordered blue lights and white flowers. She chose a simple cake and soft music. She wore the blue dress because it matched the lights. She put on small silver earrings and a bracelet her mother once wore. She pinned a note in her heart that said, "Tonight will be gentle." But it was not gentle. It was a storm. You already heard how it began, the cruel words, the dance, the kiss on the maid's hand. You already felt the room freeze and the whispering grow. You already saw Emily's breath tremble and her eyes shine with pain. So now we return to that moment when Mark said, "Don't leave, Emily. You will hear the rest." He walked to her, holding the microphone like a knife. "You have made me carry weight I did not agree to," he said. "You have made me hide in photos. You have made me ashamed to bring a wife to my business events. I won't do it anymore." He gestured to Lena. "I like things neat. I like things light. I like to move fast. She understands that. From tonight she will manage my home. If you do not like it, you can leave." People stared. Someone coughed. The band pretended to tune a guitar. Lena stood stiff, her smile frozen. Perhaps she, too, was shocked by how far Mark would go with his words. Or perhaps she was only surprised he said them here, not later. Emily felt the world go quiet and then loud again, like a wave in her ears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. She closed it. She straightened her back. She thought of her mother's voice from long ago saying, "When a drum beats too loud, you don't fight the drum. You step away and let it tire itself." Emily turned and began to walk out, slow and steady. Each step felt like carrying a basket of stones. Each step felt like walking through water. On the sidewalk, the night air cooled her cheeks. She breathed. She placed a hand on the wall to keep herself steady. She heard the hall behind her burst into noise again. Music, clapping, voices trying to pretend nothing had shattered. She reached for her phone. There was a text from her friend Sarah. "Are you okay?" Emily typed, "I will be." Then she deleted it. She typed, "I don't know." Then she deleted it too. She put the phone away and stared at the moon. It looked calm, like a wise eye watching foolish people. A taxi idled by the curb. The driver leaned his head out. "Ma'am, you need a ride?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Home, please," she whispered. The car moved through the streets. The streetlights drew yellow lines on the window. Emily pressed her palm against the cool glass. She remembered their first apartment with its squeaky ceiling fan and the way Mark used to put a blanket over her when she fell asleep on the couch. She remembered a picnic by the lake when they were 26 and broke, how they shared one sandwich and laughed until they cried. She wondered where that man had gone. When she reached the house, she told the driver to wait. She did not want to stand in the driveway alone. She used her key. The door opened. The living room was dark and neat like a hotel lobby. She turned on a lamp. The light caught her reflection in the mirror by the stairs. A woman with a blue dress, teary eyes, and a face that still held gentleness even after being struck by words. She walked to the bedroom. On the bed was a note in Mark's writing. It said, "Rules if you stay. 1. Lena runs the house. 2. No junk food in the pantry. 3. Join a gym by Monday. 4. Don't embarrass me again." At the bottom, as if it were a funny joke, he had drawn a smiley face. Emily sat on the edge of the bed and held the paper. Her hands steadied. Her breath evened. She whispered, "I am still me." She took the note, folded it twice and put it in the drawer. Then she stood and walked to the bathroom. She washed her face. She took off her earrings. She looked in the mirror and said, "I will not break." Her voice sounded small but clear. She put on a plain nightshirt not because she was hiding, but because she wanted softness on her skin. She lay down and closed her eyes. The front door opened. Footsteps. 2 voices. Mark's laugh. Lena's whisper. Emily sat up. She looked at the time. It was late. Very late. She heard bags rustle. She heard the clink of keys. She heard her name spoken like a problem. She stood and stepped into the hallway just as Mark came up the stairs with Lena behind him carrying a small bag. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "This is my house," Emily said. Her voice shook but did not fall. Mark smirked. "Our house," he said. "But only one of us is a good host now." He held up a set of keys on a blue keychain. "See these?" he asked. "New locks. I changed them yesterday. The gate. The back door. The garage. All new. Only my keys open them." Emily stared. "You changed the locks without telling me?" she asked. "I did," Mark said like a man proud of something foolish. "Because I knew tonight would come. I knew I would need a clean start. Pack your essentials. You can find somewhere else to reset." He smiled as if he were a life coach giving advice. Lena looked down at her shoes. "Mr. Mark," she said quietly. "Maybe." "Quiet," Mark snapped, and Lena went quiet. Emily felt a hot wind rise in her chest. She thought of all the rooms she had cleaned, the meals she had cooked, the cold mornings she had warmed with coffee, the late nights she had kept the book straight while Mark slept. She thought of the words he had thrown at her like rocks. She thought of the little note with rules like she was a schoolgirl and not a woman with a full heart and a full history. Then she thought of something else, that her body was not a crime. That kindness was not weakness. That even a quiet river can cut through stone if it keeps moving. She lifted her chin. "I am not leaving tonight," she said. "I am tired. I will sleep. We will talk in the morning." Mark laughed, a hard sound. "No," he said. He stepped aside and pointed down the hall. And there, lined up like soldiers, were 2 suitcases. Emily's suitcases. He had packed them. Her shoes stuck out from the side pocket. Her scarf lay across the zipper like a handkerchief waving goodbye. 10 minutes, Mark said. "I have a driver waiting. Don't make this ugly." He pulled his phone from his pocket, and in that moment the front door opened again. A tall man in a black jacket stepped in. He wore a badge. "Evening," he said, voice flat. "We're here to keep the peace while Miss Emily collects her things." Emily blinked. "You called the police?" she asked. Mark shrugged. "Just in case," he said, almost cheerful. The officer looked at Emily with tired eyes that had seen too many nights like this. "Ma'am," he said gently, "do you have somewhere safe to go?" Emily's throat closed, then opened. She nodded slowly. "I have a friend," she said. Her feet felt like stone, but they moved. She stepped past Mark and Lena. She walked to the suitcases. She placed one hand on each handle. She took a breath. The house seemed to lean toward her, listening. The clock ticked. The fridge hummed. Somewhere far away, a dog barked as if to say, "Move, move, move." And then, as she pulled the suitcases toward the door, Mark said loudly, for the officer to hear, for Lena to hear, for the empty night to swallow and spread, "Don't forget your gym shoes, Emily. You will need them more than anything." The words hit her back like thrown stones. She did not look back. She rolled the suitcases out to the porch. The driver closed the trunk with a deep thud. The officer tipped his cap to her and stepped aside. Emily climbed into the back seat, placed her palms on her knees, and told the driver the only address she could say without crying, Sarah's place. The car pulled away from the house that once held her laughter. As it turned the corner, blue porch light fading in the rear window, Emily felt a sharp pain shoot through her chest, fear, grief, and something hot and bright, a tiny spark of fight. She pressed a hand to her heart and whispered, "I will not stay broken. I will rise." The street opened ahead like a long road under a new moon. And just as the car reached the end of the block, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A short video clip of Mark and Lena inside the house, laughing in the kitchen she had cleaned for years, followed by a single line of text. Tomorrow the papers. Extreme quiet filled the car. Emily stared at the screen. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Ma'am?" he asked. "Are you okay?" Emily lifted her eyes, and for the first time that night they were steady. "Not yet," she said. "But I will be." The phone buzzed again, this time with a voice note from Sarah saying, "I'm awake. Come." The door is open. Emily leaned back. She closed her eyes. She gathered her strength like a rope. The car sped up. And as the headlights washed over the dark road, another set of headlights swung in behind them, fast, bright, and much too close. "Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to know. If this story has your heart racing, please like the video, subscribe for the next chapter, and share with a friend who needs a story of courage. Your support helps me keep telling these tales." The tires screeched behind them. The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. Emily opened her eyes. A black SUV followed close, its headlights blinding through the rear window. The driver muttered, "They're tailing us." Emily's heart pounded. "Who?" she asked, though she already knew. The SUV swerved left, then right like a predator circling prey. The driver pressed the gas. "Hold on, ma'am," he said. The car leapt forward. The city lights blurred. Emily gripped the seat, her nails digging into the fabric. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. It read, "Don't think you can run." The SUV honked, sharp and long. The driver veered onto a side street, tires screaming. "We'll shake them," he said. But the SUV stayed behind, its engine growling. Emily's throat felt dry. Her whole body shook. Then she remembered Sarah's voice. "The door is open." That thought became her anchor. "Just get me to Maple Street," she whispered. The driver nodded. The chase went on for blocks. Narrow roads. Empty intersections. Dark shops with iron gates. At one corner the SUV pulled ahead and cut across, blocking the road. The driver slammed the brakes. Emily flew forward, catching herself on the seat. The SUV's door opened. And out stepped Mark. His face shone with sweat, rage, and something crueler, pride. He pointed at Emily. "Get out," he shouted. "You're not leaving me like this. Not tonight." The driver leaned over. "Stay in," he said firmly. "Don't move." He shifted gears, turned the car sharply, and roared down another street. The SUV's tires squealed as it followed, but this time the driver found a narrow alley too tight for the bigger car. They sped through, sparks flying as mirrors scraped brick walls. Behind them the SUV stalled, horn blaring in the night. Emily gasped for air. The driver slowed only when they reached Maple Street, a row of quiet homes with garden fences. Sarah stood outside in her robe, arms crossed, eyes sharp with worry. She waved them in. The driver parked. Emily stumbled out, holding her bags. Sarah ran to her, hugged her tight, and whispered, "You're safe now." Safe. The word broke Emily's strength. She fell into Sarah's arms, tears streaming. He humiliated me," Emily choked out. "In front of everyone. He wants me gone. He's with her now." Sarah stroked her hair. "You're here. That's all that matters. We'll fix this." Inside, the house smelled like chamomile and fresh bread. Sarah made tea. Emily sat on the couch, holding the warm cup with trembling hands. Sarah said, "You're not the first woman to be treated like this. But you can be the first to rise higher than anyone expects." Emily shook her head. "I don't even know where to start." Sarah leaned close. "Start by remembering who you are. You're not broken, Emily. You're unshaken clay. You can be shaped again. But this time you will do the shaping." Emily sipped the tea. The warmth spread. She whispered, "I don't want to be weak anymore. I don't want him to win." Sarah smiled. "Then don't. We will take your pain and turn it into strength." The next morning, Emily woke early. She looked at herself in the mirror in Sarah's guest room. Puffy eyes, tired face, body heavier than she wanted. But beneath the surface a spark. She whispered, "Not for him. For me." She put on sneakers Sarah lent her. She stepped outside. The morning air was crisp. The street was quiet except for a man walking his dog. Emily started to walk. Just walk. Her knees ached, but she moved. One step, then another. Each step was like saying, "I am still here." By the time she returned, sweat trickled down her back. Her breath was heavy. Sarah met her at the door with a towel and a grin. "Day one," she said. Well done. Emily smiled weakly. It was small, but it was something. Days turned into weeks. Emily walked every morning. Then she jogged. Sarah cooked with her, vegetables, lean meat, fresh fruits. Slowly her body began to change. The mirror no longer felt like an enemy. The scale no longer mocked. She felt her arms stronger, her legs lighter. She laughed again, not at everything but enough to feel human. Yet every night she remembered Mark's words. His laugh. His hand on Lena's. His cruel smile as he waved the keys. Those memories burned inside her. She did not cry anymore. She stored them piece by piece like arrows waiting for the right time. And then, one evening as she jogged past the community park, she saw a flyer posted on the board. It was for a charity event. Sponsored by Mark's dealership. The theme, Healthy Living, Happy Families. The guest list included business leaders, politicians, and even the mayor. At the bottom of the flyer she saw a photo. Mark and Lena side by side smiling. And the caption, Mark and Lena, leading by example. Emily froze. Her chest rose and fell. Her eyes narrowed. She clenched her fists. He thinks this is finished, she whispered. He thinks I'm gone. But I'm not. The wind rustled the flyer. Emily tore it down, folded it, and slipped it into her pocket. She looked at the sky, her heart steady. Not yet, she said. But soon. The streetlight flickered above her. The park grew quiet. She stood there, her breath fogging in the cool air. And just then her phone buzzed again. An unknown number. This time no video. No words. Only a photo, her wedding picture with Mark ripped in half, and beneath it one line of text. Stay away from the gala. Or else. Emily's lips curved, not in fear but in the faintest trace of a smile. Or else, she whispered. She closed the message. And began to plan. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I'd love to know. And if this chapter shook you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. The warning text kept flashing in Emily's mind like a red light. Stay away from the gala. Or else. She read it again and again until the letters no longer looked like words but like chains trying to lock her in place. She placed the phone on the nightstand, sat on the edge of Sarah's bed, and pressed her palms together. She thought of the night Mark humiliated her. The crowd's whispers. The maid's nervous smile. The rules scribbled on paper as if her life was something to manage. And now this text, another attempt to silence her. Emily straightened her back. They can try, she whispered, but I will not stay quiet. The next morning she told Sarah everything. Sarah listened, eyes fierce. Then we'll make sure you show up at that gala, she said. Not as the broken wife they laughed at, but as the woman they never saw coming. Emily blinked. Sarah, what if I'm not ready? What if I stand there and they mock me again? Sarah leaned closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. Revenge isn't about their laughter. It's about your strength. You won't go to prove something to them, you'll go to remind yourself who you are. And when you do, they'll have no choice but to see it. Those words sank deep. From that day, Emily's preparation doubled. She joined a fitness class. The trainer was strict, making her sweat until her legs trembled, but Emily did not quit. Each squat, each push-up, each lap felt like hammer strikes breaking chains. She lost pounds. Her body grew stronger. She stood taller, not hiding under loose dresses anymore but choosing clothes that fit her new shape. Weeks passed. The gala drew closer. Emily felt the fire inside her grow hotter, steadier. She could already imagine walking into that hall, no longer the woman Mark mocked but the woman who had remade herself. But one evening, while stretching after her run, she received another message. This time it was a short video. In it, Mark sat at his office desk, Lena beside him. Mark leaned toward the camera and said, "You don't belong in my world anymore, Emily. Stay away. If you step into that gala, you'll regret it. I promise you." The video ended. Emily's heart raced, but instead of fear, anger filled her veins. She clenched her phone. "You promised me vows once," she whispered. "And you broke them. Now you promise me regret? We'll see." The night before the gala, Sarah surprised her with a gift, a long, flowing red gown. The fabric shimmered like fire under light. "This," Sarah said, "isn't just a dress. It's your armor. Tomorrow when you walk into that room, every eye will turn. And Mark, he will choke on his own pride." Emily ran her hand over the fabric. For the first time in months she felt beautiful. Not because the dress was expensive, but because she had fought for the body that now carried it. Morning came. Emily woke early, her heart steady. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. The softness was still there, but now it was shaped by strength. Her jawline was sharper. Her waist slimmer. Her eyes brighter. She smiled at her reflection, and for the first time the smile felt real. At sunset, Sarah helped her zip the gown. She wore simple jewelry, a pair of pearl earrings, her mother's bracelet. Her hair was styled in soft waves that framed her face. She looked powerful, radiant, untouchable. The car arrived. Emily stepped in, her pulse quick but steady. The ride to the gala was quiet. The city lights shimmered outside, but Emily's eyes stayed fixed ahead. Finally, the car stopped at the Grand Hotel where the gala was held. Cameras flashed outside. Business leaders stepped out in suits and gowns. Emily's hand trembled on the door handle. Sarah squeezed her hand. "Remember," she whispered, "you are not here for him. You are here for you." Emily nodded. The driver opened the door. Emily stepped out. The cameras turned instantly. Faces lit with surprise. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Is that Emily?" someone whispered. "She looks incredible." Emily walked past them, her head high, her gown flowing like a river of fire. She entered the hall. Music played softly. Crystal chandeliers glowed. Mark stood at the center with Lena by his side, laughing loudly, a glass in his hand. He turned and froze. His smile vanished. His eyes widened. The glass nearly slipped from his fingers. Lena's face tightened. The entire room turned to look at Emily. Gasps filled the air. Some clapped quietly, others whispered louder. Emily stopped in the center of the hall, her eyes fixed on Mark. She tilted her chin slightly, smiled, and said just loud enough for him to hear, "Did you miss me?" The hall went silent. Mark's jaw clenched. His fingers tightened on the glass until it cracked. And then, the ballroom doors slammed open behind her. Two men in dark suits entered, holding folders. Their faces were grim. One of them called out, "Is Mark Johnson here? We need to speak with you immediately. It's about your company." The entire room gasped again. Emily's smile widened. Her revenge had only just begun. "Where are you watching from? Comment below, I'd love to know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if you're hooked." The entire ballroom froze. The chandeliers seemed to flicker, and whispers ran like fire through dry grass. Mark's face turned pale. His grip on the cracked glass tightened until it finally shattered in his hand. Shards fell onto the polished floor, tinkling like cruel bells. Lena glanced at him, panic flashing in her eyes. "Mark, what's going on?" she whispered. The two men in dark suits stepped closer. One pulled out a badge. "We're from the State Financial Bureau," he announced. "There are questions regarding your company's funds, Mr. Johnson. Some very serious discrepancies have been discovered." Gasps erupted. A few guests pulled out their phones, already recording. The mayor, who stood not far away, shook his head with disapproval. Mark stammered, This is a mistake. It's a misunderstanding. Tonight is my gala. You can't come here and—" But the men didn't flinch. "Sir, we can talk here in front of your guests, or we can step outside. Your choice." The hall buzzed with excitement. Some faces turned away in shame for Mark, others in hunger for scandal. Emily stood at the center, her red gown glowing like fire under the chandeliers. She didn't move, didn't speak. She simply watched, calm and steady, as Mark struggled. Finally, Mark forced a laugh, his voice trembling. "Gentlemen, please, give me a moment." He turned to Lena, shoving his glass into her hands. "Take care of the guests," he snapped. Lena froze, her knuckles tight around the stem of the glass. She glanced nervously at Emily, then back at Mark, her lips pressed into a thin line. Mark followed the agents toward a side room. The crowd exploded into chatter. Discrepancies. Fraud. Could he be finished? The whispers swirled like smoke. Emily walked gracefully toward the bar and took a glass of water. Her heart pounded, but her face showed no fear. She had not planned this part, but fate had chosen to move, and she would let it. Minutes later, the side room door opened. Mark returned, his face drenched in sweat, his suit clinging to his back. The agents followed, carrying files. One spoke loudly so everyone could hear, "We'll continue this investigation tomorrow morning at your office, Mr. Johnson. Don't leave town." The words dropped like stones. Mark's empire of pride cracked. The audience's murmurs grew louder, heavier. Mark tried to smile, but the corners of his mouth twitched. He raised his voice, desperate. "Everyone enjoy yourselves. It's just routine checks. Nothing more." But the more he spoke, the less they believed. His voice sounded hollow. Emily stepped forward. For the first time in years she felt taller than him. She stood so close he could hear her breath and whispered just enough for him to hear, "Funny, isn't it? You call me your shame. And now, you are the shame in this room." Mark's nostrils flared. He wanted to snap, to spit back, but every eye was on him. Every phone was raised. If he lost his temper now, the world would see it. He turned quickly to Lena and barked, "Dance with me." He pulled her to the center. The band, confused, started to play. But the dance was stiff. His steps were shaky. Lena's eyes darted around nervously. The guests clapped politely but not sincerely. All attention drifted back to Emily, who stood radiant in her gown, her arms folded calmly. Mark knew it. He could feel it. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the star of the room. And that drove him mad. As the song ended, he released Lena's hand roughly. "Get me another drink," he hissed. Lena blinked, humiliated. The guests saw it too. A few women exchanged knowing looks. The tide of the room was shifting. Emily lifted her glass of water and gave a small toast to no one in particular. The gesture was subtle, but the room caught it, and a ripple of applause began, quiet at first, then louder. It wasn't for Mark. It wasn't for Lena. It was for Emily. Mark's face burned red. He slammed his fist on the table. "Enough," he shouted. The music stopped. The applause died. He turned to Emily, his fingers stabbing the air. "You think this changes anything? You're still nothing without me." The room gasped. Phones recorded. The mayor shook his head and walked out, disgusted. Investors followed. Mark's empire was crumbling, not from money alone but from respect. Emily placed her glass down, calm as ever. She looked straight into Mark's furious eyes and said, "No, Mark. I was nothing with you." The room erupted again, this time with whispers and even cheers. Mark's chest heaved. His hand shook. And in a fit of rage, he raised his arm as if to strike her. But before his hand could fall, a firm grip caught his wrist. Everyone turned. It was one of the financial agents. His voice was low but commanding. "Mr. Johnson, that would be a mistake. A very public mistake." The hall went dead silent. Mark froze, trembling, his arm still caught. Emily stared at him, her eyes steady, her lips pressed in a calm line. The agent released his wrist slowly, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Mark had raised his hand to strike and someone else had to stop him. And in that silence, Lena, still clutching the drink, whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe she isn't the one who should be ashamed." The crowd gasped. Mark spun to her, his eyes blazing. "What did you just say?" But Lena didn't back down this time. She raised her chin. "You treat everyone like dirt, Mark. One day you'll have no one left." The room erupted. Some cheered. Some gasped louder. Mark's empire wasn't just cracking now, it was shattering. And Emily knew it was only the beginning. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, I'd love to know. If this chapter shook you, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this story. The next action will leave you speechless. Mark's chest heaved as he stood in the center of the ballroom, eyes darting wildly. Sweat trickled down his forehead. The humiliation was no longer a whisper, it was a roaring storm. Phones recorded every twitch of his face, every crack in his once proud posture. "Turn those cameras off," he barked, his voice hoarse. But no one listened. Some guests even angled their phones higher, making sure they caught every detail. Emily stood tall, the red gown draped around her like royal armor. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. She did not need to shout. She did not need to move. Her calm silence spoke louder than his fury. Mark spun on Lena. "You," he snapped, pointing a trembling finger at her. "You dare talk back to me? After everything I gave you?" Lena's hands shook, but her voice was steady. "You didn't give me respect. You didn't give anyone respect. Not even her." She nodded toward Emily. The crowd gasped. For a split second, Mark's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked from Lena to Emily, from Emily to the guests, then back again. It was the look of a man cornered, desperate to claw his way out. He grabbed a microphone from the bandstand. "Listen to me," he shouted. This woman," he jabbed a finger toward Emily, "is trying to ruin me. She is bitter. She is jealous. She can't stand that I moved on with someone younger, smarter, better." The words slipped like poison, but instead of weakening Emily, they backfired. Murmurs rippled across the room. Someone shouted, "Then why did you marry her in the first place?" Laughter followed. Mark's face twisted. His hand trembled so hard the microphone buzzed. Emily finally stepped forward. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like a drumbeat. She stopped just inches from him, her eyes locked on his. Better? She repeated softly. Then her voice rose, strong and clear enough to echo against the chandelier-lit walls. Better is not about size. Better is not about skin. Better is not about who flatters you when you are cruel. Better is about character, Mark. And you lost yours long ago. The crowd erupted in applause. Some stood, clapping and whistling. Mark's hand dropped to his side. His face contorted with rage and disbelief. But then, another voice rang out. Mr. Johnson. The doors opened again. A man in a gray suit with silver glasses walked in, holding a thick folder. He was flanked by 2 assistants. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Mark's eyes widened. No, not him, he muttered. Emily glanced at Sarah, who had arrived quietly and was now standing near the back, arms folded with a knowing smile. The man in gray stepped forward, his tone crisp and sharp. I represent the investors of Johnson Motors. We've reviewed the books. Funds are missing. Papers are forged. And effective immediately, you are removed as CEO. The room went silent for 2 long beats. Then chaos erupted. Guests gasped, shouted, pulled out phones. Reporters in the crowd rushed forward. The mayor, who had slipped back in to watch, simply shook his head and walked out again. Mark staggered back as though struck. No. You can't. This is my company. My name is on every car, every deal, every contract. The man in gray cut him off with icy calm. Not anymore. The board voted. You are finished. Mark's knees buckled. He clutched the edge of a table for balance. His world was crumbling in front of everyone he had tried so hard to impress. Emily, meanwhile, did not gloat. She simply raised her chin, her eyes steady. For once, the humiliation was not hers. It was his. But just as Mark tried to gather himself, another blow landed. Lena stepped forward, her voice trembling but loud enough for the microphones to catch. And I'm done too. I won't stand by your side and watch you destroy everyone around you. You treated me like an object. You treated her like trash. And now you stand here exposed. I want no part of it. She dropped the glass she had been holding onto the floor. It shattered loudly, echoing in the silent hall. The crowd gasped again. Mark's head whipped toward her. Lena, he shouted, his voice breaking. Don't you dare walk away from me. But Lena did not stop. She walked straight toward Emily. For a brief moment, their eyes met, 2 women who had been caught in the same web, though from different angles. Emily did not speak, but her calm gaze said everything. Lena lowered her eyes, whispered, I'm sorry, and slipped out of the hall. Mark's empire, his wife, his mistress, his company, his reputation, had all collapsed in a single night. But as he stood trembling, gripping the microphone with desperate fingers, his eyes burned into Emily's with one last flicker of madness. This isn't over, he hissed. You think you've won, but I'll destroy you before I fall. The crowd gasped again. Phones caught every word. Emily's lips parted, but before she could speak, Mark lunged toward her. The hall erupted in screams. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, I'd love to know. If this story has you hooked, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. The next story will leave your jaw on the floor. The scream that tore through the ballroom froze the night. Mark's body lunged forward like a bull, his hands reaching for Emily's arms. For a split second, it looked as if he might drag her down in front of everyone. But Emily did not flinch. She stood tall in her red gown as strong arms grabbed Mark from the side. The financial agents and 2 security guards slammed into him before he could touch her. Glasses toppled from tables. Guests shrieked and backed away, pulling their gowns and tuxedos aside as the struggle unfolded. Mark thrashed like a cornered animal. Let me go, he bellowed. She ruined me. She ruined everything. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but her eyes stayed steady. For once she wasn't the one being humiliated, he was. And the entire city would hear of it by morning. One of the guards shoved Mark into a chair. His tie hung loose, his face red, his hair sticking with sweat. He looked nothing like the proud man who had once commanded every room. Now he looked broken. But his voice still carried venom. He spat on the marble floor, glaring up at Emily. You think you're better than me because you lost weight? Because you wear a shiny dress? You're still nothing without me. Nothing. The ballroom went dead silent again. Emily took a deep breath. She stepped closer, her heels echoing against the floor. She leaned just enough so her words could be heard by him, the guards, and the recording phones surrounding them. You're wrong, Mark, she said, her voice calm and strong. I'm not nothing without you. I was nothing with you. Now I'm free. The crowd erupted, cheers, claps, even whistles. The sound bounced off the crystal chandeliers like thunder. Mark shook his head wildly, his face twisted with disbelief. He slammed his fist against the chair's armrest. No. No, this isn't how it ends. This isn't how it ends. And then, in a final act of madness, he lunged again, this time not for Emily but for the microphone. He grabbed it from the stand, his voice echoing over the speakers. "Listen to me," he screamed. "I built this city's trust. I built this company. You all ate at my table, drank my wine, begged for my deals, and now you cheer for her? A fat woman who decided to starve herself just to win applause? You're all fools." Gasps filled the hall. Some booed. Some shouted back. Cameras flashed nonstop. Emily didn't move. She let him rant. Every word dug his grave deeper. Finally, the agents pried the microphone from his hands. One leaned into it and announced, "Mr. Johnson is leaving this gala in custody for disorderly conduct and pending investigation." The room exploded with chatter. Mark's face drained of color. "No, you can't, not in front of them, not in front of her." The guards dragged him toward the doors as he kicked and shouted. His voice grew fainter until it was swallowed by the night outside. Silence returned. And then, like a wave rising after a storm, the applause began again, this time louder, stronger, and wholly directed at Emily. She stood there, her chest rising and falling, her eyes wet but steady. For years she had carried shame, mockery, and silence. Tonight she stood in her power. Sarah pushed through the crowd and hugged her tight. "You did it," she whispered. "You faced him and you didn't break." Emily's lips trembled, but she whispered back, "It's not over. Not yet. His revenge will come. I can feel it." Sarah pulled back, her eyes fierce. "Then we'll be ready." Emily nodded slowly. She turned back to the guests, many of whom were still staring at her in awe. She raised her glass once more, her voice calm but commanding. "Better is not about money. It's not about weight. It's not about who you stand beside. Better is about kindness. About respect. About strength. Remember that." The hall cheered. Some even wiped tears. But deep down, as the music started again and people began to dance to cover the storm that had passed, Emily's heart whispered one truth. Mark's fall had only just begun. And so had her revenge. Because little did Mark know, Emily now had something he could never take back. An envelope, slipped to her quietly by one of the investors as the chaos unfolded. Inside it was a secret about the company. A secret that could destroy him completely. She tucked it into her clutch. Her fingers tightened around it. "This," she whispered to herself, "is the key." Where are you watching from? Comment below, I'd love to know. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share. The story chapter will reveal the secret in that envelope, and you don't want to miss it. The envelope in Emily's clutch felt heavier than stone. She could feel the weight of it in her palm, though it was only paper. She excused herself from the gala early, her gown flowing behind her as she walked out of the Grand Hotel. Sarah followed close, her heels clicking against the marble steps. "Emily," Sarah whispered, "what's inside?" Emily shook her head. "Not here. Too many years." The car pulled up. Inside, the world was quiet, the chaos of the gala left behind. Emily sat back, clutched tight in her hand, her heart pounding. The city lights blurred outside the window. She ran her fingers over the edge of the envelope. She knew opening it would change everything, but was she ready? At Sarah's house, they sat at the dining table. Emily finally broke the seal. Her hands trembled. She pulled out a stack of papers. Numbers, charts, signatures. But one page stood out, stamped in red ink, "Unauthorized transfer." Her eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What is it?" Sarah asked, leaning in. Emily pushed the paper toward her. "Mark's been funneling money. Millions. Into accounts overseas. Accounts not in his name." Sarah squinted at the papers, then gasped. "Whose name is that?" Emily's eyes scanned the document. And then her blood ran cold. Lena. The maid's name was on the account. Every stolen dollar was funneled under her identity. Sarah sat back stunned. "He's setting her up." Emily's breath caught. The image of Lena's face at the gala flashed in her mind. Her apology, her trembling voice, the glass shattering at her feet. She had walked away from Mark, not knowing he had already planted a trap that could ruin her life. Emily's hand tightened on the paper. "He wants her to fall with him," she said slowly. "He's planning to make her the scapegoat." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "And if you expose this, Emily, he'll go down for fraud. For embezzlement. He won't just lose his company, he'll lose his freedom. Emily's pulse raced. She could almost see it. Mark in handcuffs, his empire in ashes, his pride shattered beyond repair. But then another thought flickered. A memory of Lena's young face, her nervous hands when she first arrived at the house, her voice saying yes ma'am, no sir. A girl caught in a trap she didn't build. Do I destroy him? Emily whispered. Or save her? The question hung heavy in the air. Sarah leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. This is your chance, Emily. He humiliated you, mocked you, threw you out of your own house. He deserves every ounce of what's coming. But, if you want to be better than him, you'll find a way to protect her too. That's what will make your revenge righteous. Emily closed her eyes, her fingers pressing into the papers. Her heart felt torn in two. She wanted justice. She wanted peace. She wanted to rise without becoming cruel. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. This time it was a video of Lena, crying in Mark's office, her voice shaky. I don't understand why these people came asking about bank accounts. I never signed anything like that. I swear I didn't. Then Mark's voice cut in, smooth and mocking. Show Lena. Don't worry. I'll protect you. Just sign where I tell you. The video ended. Emily and Sarah stared at the phone in silence. Finally, Emily whispered, he's tightening the noose. If she signs, it's over for her. Sarah's jaw clenched. Then you have to act before she does. Emily looked down at the papers again. The path was clear now. She could take the evidence to the authorities. She could save Lena and destroy Mark in one move. But it would mean stepping into the fire herself, facing him head-on. Her lips curved into a small, steady smile. Then that's exactly what I'll do. Sarah's eyes softened with pride. That's the Emily I know. Emily folded the papers back into the envelope and placed it carefully into her clutch. Her voice was firm now. Tomorrow morning I'll meet with the bureau. I'll hand them everything. The decision felt like steel in her chest. But as she rose from the table, another message came through. This time it was only 3 words written in all caps. I'm coming tonight. Emily's blood ran cold. The lights in the house flickered. And outside in the dark street, the low hum of an engine idled, waiting. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to know. And if this chapter has your heart racing, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. The story chapter will leave you on the edge of your seat. The hum of the engine outside rattled Emily's chest more than thunder ever could. She moved quietly to the window, pulling the curtain just an inch. Headlights glowed dim in the distance, aimed directly at Sarah's house. The silhouette of a man sat behind the wheel, unmoving. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Open the door. Sarah stepped up behind her, peering through the curtain. It's him, she whispered, her voice tight. Emily, he found you. Emily's knees trembled, but she stood straighter. Of course he did. Mark never lets go when he's cornered. The house felt too small suddenly. Every creak of the wood, every hum of the fridge, every ticking clock seemed louder. Sarah touched Emily's arm. We should call the police. Emily shook her head. No. If I call, he'll spin it. He'll make me the crazy ex-wife trying to ruin him. The police will ask for proof, and I can't hand this envelope to just anyone. Not yet. She tapped the clutch still pressed against her side. This is my weapon. And he knows it. The car outside door creaked open. A shadow moved across the street. Slow. Deliberate. Heavy steps crunched the gravel. Then came the knock. 3 loud bangs. Emily. Mark's voice rang through the door. You think you can hide in there? Come out. Let's finish this. Sarah stiffened, but Emily raised a hand. Let me handle this. She walked to the door, every step echoing in her bones. She placed her hand on the knob but didn't turn it. What do you want, Mark? She shouted through the wood. His laugh was bitter. What do I want? I want my life back. You think you can strip me of everything? Parade yourself at my gala like a queen? You think you've won because you lost a few pounds and wore a red dress? No. You've just started a war you can't finish. Emily's jaw tightened. I didn't strip you of anything. You dug your own grave. There was silence. Then, in a darker tone, open the door, Emily, or I'll break it. Sarah grabbed her phone, whispering, we can't let him in. But before she could dial, the sound of wood splintering filled the air. Mark had kicked the door once, twice, and on the 3rd blow the frame cracked. The door swung open. There he was, Mark, disheveled, his shirt half untucked, tie gone, eyes bloodshot with fury. He stepped inside like a storm, his gaze locked on Emily, the envelope clutched against her chest. Sarah shouted, get out, but Mark ignored her. His eyes were only for Emily. "You think you're clever?" he snarled. "Walking around with my secrets like trophies? That envelope doesn't save you, it kills you. Do you even know what's inside? Ties you to Lena. It ties you to me. You'll go down with us." Emily's heart skipped. Was it true? Had he planted something inside the papers to trap her too? She held the envelope tighter. Mark stepped closer. "Give it to me, Emily. Hand it over and maybe I'll let you walk away quietly. Keep it and I promise you, you won't live to use it." His voice was low, trembling with rage. His hand reached forward, ready to snatch it. But Emily didn't step back. She stood tall, her voice calm, every word sharp as glass. "No, Mark. For once in your life, you don't get to take." Mark froze. The fury in his eyes burned hotter. His hand twitched. For a moment it looked like he would strike. Then red and blue lights flashed through the broken doorway. Police sirens wailed. Sarah had pressed the emergency call without him noticing. Mark whipped around, panic flooding his face. Officers stormed in, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them," one barked. Mark's rage crumbled into desperation. "No. You don't understand. She's lying. She's framing me. That envelope, it's forged." He turned to Emily, his eyes wild. "Tell them, Emily. Tell them." But Emily simply held the envelope higher. "Everything you need is in here," she told the officers. Her voice didn't shake. "Bank transfers. Stolen funds. Proof that he used Lena as his scapegoat." The officers stepped forward, one taking the envelope from her hands. Mark lunged again, but two policemen grabbed him, twisting his arms behind his back. He roared like an animal caught in a trap. "No. This isn't over. You'll regret this, Emily. You'll regret it." The officers dragged him toward the flashing lights outside. His shouts echoed down the street, loud at first, then fading into the night until there was only silence. Emily stood in the doorway, breathing hard, her body trembling from the storm that had just passed. Sarah wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "It's over," Sarah whispered. Emily shook her head slowly, eyes still on the lights outside. "No," she said. "This was just the arrest. The trial will be the real ending." And deep in her chest, she knew one truth: she wasn't done. Not until Mark lost the one thing he loved more than women, more than money, more than power: his pride. Where are you watching from? Share it in the comments, I'd love to know. And if you're hooked, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this story. The next story will drag Mark into the courtroom, and that's where Emily's revenge will burn brightest. The courthouse smelled of old wood and dust, the kind of air that carried a weight of judgment. The next morning, reporters swarmed the steps, cameras flashing like lightning, voices overlapping in a storm of questions. "Mark Johnson, are you guilty of fraud? Did you funnel millions into offshore accounts? Is it true you framed your maid?" Emily stood at the bottom of the steps, clutching Sarah's hand. She wore a black fitted suit, her hair pulled into a neat bun, her face calm and unreadable. Every camera turned when she appeared. The whispers spread: "That's her. The wife. The one he humiliated." Mark arrived minutes later, dragged in by officers in handcuffs. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, his tie missing, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. The crowd booed. Some shouted insults. He ducked his head, trying to avoid the cameras, but it was useless. His shame was now public property. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called the room to order. "This court will hear the case of Mark Johnson versus the state." The prosecutor rose, laying out the case with precision. Embezzlement, wire fraud, falsified documents. He held up the very envelope Emily had delivered, its pages now enlarged and pinned on a board for all to see. And there it was, Lena's name on the offshore accounts. The prosecutor spoke clearly. The defendant funneled millions into illegal accounts under the identity of a domestic worker in his household, intending to scapegoat her should the fraud be discovered. Gasps rippled through the court. Lena herself sat in the back row, her hands trembling in her lap. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Mark shot to his feet. "Lies. All lies," he shouted. "She was in on it. She knew everything. Emily helped her, don't you see? This is all her plan." He jabbed a finger toward Emily. "She's behind this." The judge's gavel slammed. "Order." Emily stood slowly. The room went silent. She looked at Mark, then at the judge. Her voice was calm, steady. "I did not frame Lena. I did not steal a single cent. But I did live with the man who did. I saw the cruelty. I lived the humiliation. And I carried his shame for years while he carried his pride. She turned toward the jury, her voice louder now. I will not carry it any more. The prosecutor nodded. We call Lena to the stand. The young maid stood, her legs shaking. She walked to the front, raised her hand and swore to tell the truth. Her voice cracked at first but grew stronger with each word. Mr. Johnson told me to sign papers. He said they were for household accounts. I trusted him. I didn't know he was stealing. When the investigators came, he told me if I kept quiet, he'd protect me. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But he never protected anyone. Not me. Not her. She pointed at Emily. He used us. Both of us. The courtroom murmured. Mark slammed his fists against the table. She's lying. They're all lying. But the evidence was too strong. The bank transfers. The signatures. The video Emily had saved of his mocking voice. The prosecutor turned to the judge. Your Honor, the state rests its case. The judge leaned back, her sharp eyes fixed on Mark. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything to say in your defense before the jury deliberates? Mark stood, trembling with rage. He straightened his wrinkled suit, his voice rising like a desperate man clinging to a cliff. Yes, he said. I have something to say. The courtroom leaned in. I may have made mistakes. But you all cheered for me once. You admired me. You shook my hand, you begged for my deals. And now you cheer for her? A woman who let herself go, who embarrassed me, who only lost weight because she wanted revenge. You think she's your hero? He turned to the jury, his voice shaking. She's not a hero. She's still the fat, pitiful woman I threw out of my house. Don't let her fool you. The courtroom went dead silent. Every word landed like a blade in the wrong direction. The jury's faces hardened. The judge's eyes narrowed. Emily did not flinch. She stood tall, her chin lifted, and whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. Thank you, Mark. You just sentenced yourself. The jury retired. Within an hour they returned. The foreman stood, holding the slip of paper that would decide his fate. The judge asked, What is your verdict? The foreman's voice rang clear. We find the defendant guilty on all counts. The room exploded. Reporters rushed out to break the news. Lena burst into sobs of relief. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand so hard it hurt. Mark staggered back, his face drained of blood. The judge's gavel slammed again. Mark Johnson, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in state prison for fraud, embezzlement and attempted coercion. Officers, take him away. The chains clicked around his wrists. As they dragged him past Emily, his eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over, he hissed. Even in prison, I'll find a way to make you pay. But Emily only smiled softly, her eyes steady. You've already paid, Mark. You just don't know it yet. The courtroom doors slammed behind him. And for the first time in years, Emily felt truly free. But deep inside, she knew her revenge wasn't finished. Not until she took back the life he tried to destroy. Not until she rebuilt herself, not as his wife, not as his victim, but as Emily, the woman who rose from ashes. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to know. If this chapter had you holding your breath, make sure to like, subscribe and share this story. The next story will show how Emily rises even higher from the ruins, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. The city awoke the next morning to headlines that burned brighter than fire. Mark Johnson, once city's golden businessman, falls from grace, sentenced to 25 years. Humiliation at gala, fraud in court, jail in chains. Ex-wife Emily walks tall as justice is served. News anchors replayed clips from the courtroom. The moment Mark raised his hand to strike. The moment Emily stood in red and declared, better is about character. The moment the gavel came down. Emily watched from Sarah's couch, sipping tea, her hair tied in a simple ponytail, her heart strangely calm. For years she had been the subject of whispers, mocked for her body, pitted for her silence, humiliated by the man she trusted most. Now those same voices called her brave, strong, the woman who stood her ground. But Emily knew this was not the end. It was the beginning. Days turned into weeks. Mark was locked behind prison walls, his empire seized, his cars repossessed, his mansion auctioned. The women he had flaunted vanished like smoke. His name, once shouted in respect, became a curse whispered in boardrooms. Meanwhile, Lena was cleared of all charges. The Bureau released a statement. She was a victim of coercion, not a conspirator. One afternoon, she appeared at Sarah's doorstep with a small bag in her hands. I just wanted to say thank you, Lena whispered, tears in her eyes. You saved me. Emily studied her. She remembered the girl who once stood nervously with a suitcase at her door, the same girl who later stood at the gala with trembling lips. For a moment, anger flickered, anger that Lena had been part of her humiliation. But then Emily saw the truth. Lena was just another soul Mark had used. "You don't owe me thanks," Emily said softly. "You owe yourself a new life. Go live it well." Lena nodded, tears spilling freely, and walked away lighter than she had arrived. As for Emily, she began to rebuild. She joined a community program for women who had been mocked, abandoned, or abused. She stood before them not as a victim but as a survivor. She shared her story, the humiliation, the shame, the nights of tears, the mornings of small steps, the red dress of fire, the courtroom of justice. Her voice carried strength. "They will try to break you. They will tell you that your body is too much or too little. They will say you are nothing without them. But listen to me, better is not about their approval. Better is about your strength. And if I can rise, so can you." The women clapped, some cried, some stood. For the first time, Emily's pain had become not just her revenge but her power. Months later, Emily walked through the very dealership that once bore Mark's name. Only this time the sign read differently: Emily Motors, driven by integrity. The investors, tired of corruption, had offered her a seat at the table after her testimony. Her knowledge of the books, the evidence she had provided, and her reputation for honesty made her the perfect new face for the company. Emily walked through the glass doors in a white suit, her head high, her staff greeting her with genuine smiles. She wasn't just surviving now, she was leading. And in a prison cell miles away, Mark watched the news on a flickering screen. His jaw clenched. His fists tightened. He saw Emily in her white suit, shaking hands, smiling with pride. He saw the new name above the company he once called his. And for the first time in his life, Mark tasted the full bitterness of defeat. Emily had not just taken revenge. She had taken back her life. As she stood in her new office, overlooking the city skyline, Sarah walked in with a grin. "Well, Madam CEO, how does it feel?" Emily smiled, her eyes steady. "It feels like freedom." She placed a framed photo on her desk, not of Mark, not of her wedding, but of herself on the day she ran her first mile again. Sweaty, tired, smiling. The beginning of her journey. And with that, Emily leaned back in her chair, her heart light, her spirit strong. The woman once mocked as weak, humiliated as fat, dismissed as nothing, now stood taller than she ever dreamed. Her revenge was complete. But more importantly, her healing had begun. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, I'd love to know. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. No matter how dark it gets, you can always rise. Rose.